Welcome to the first episode of the MSVU History Department podcast. I'm joined today by Dr. Janet Guildford, historian, retired professor, and one of the key figures in the development of women's history in Nova Scotia. Thank you for joining us. Could you start by telling listeners a little bit about yourself and how you first became interested in history?
Thank you, Tawani. Glad to be with you. I think I want to say that I first became interested in history because my family has been here so long. I am a fifth generation Haligonian, and my father had a great interest in history. And I think the history of the women in our family came to the surface very early. And my favorite story in childhood was about my great-grandmother, Ellie Douglas, who went to sea on a sailing ship for several years with her husband, Captain Thomas Douglas. She had 3 babies with her along on her sailing journeys around the world. And that was a story that attracted me emotionally and I guess historically, I'd say now.
And this is how that eventually led you toward women's history?
Well, I think it was the women in my family that led me there. They were the heroes of the stories. Although my father certainly loved his sea captain grandfathers. He had 2 sea captain grandfathers.
And is there a project or a moment from your teaching career that stands out as especially meaningful?
There was a period when I was teaching part-time at the Mount. I think it was probably just after I got my PhD. And I was teaching evening classes in women's history. And they were always fully subscribed, as full as they could be. And the students were generally older than conventional university students. And they pretty much all worked full-time at paid jobs during the day. They had families to look after. And the thing they did for themselves was to come to learn about women's history. They were engaged. They were interesting, they had lots of questions, and it really was a very special time in my teaching career.
This is very good to know as a student. It's very important to know how meaningful we are in professor's journey, right?
Yes, and you certainly are central.
And I can see here that you were one of the founding chair of Women's History in Nova Scotia. How did that initiative begin and what inspired it?
The inspiration really came from a professor of nursing at Dalhousie, Francis Gregor, who said to me one night at the Nova Scotia Historical Society, "We need a woman on the waterfront," period. And what she meant was that all the statues commemorating historical episodes in Halifax were of men, and that it was really important to recognize the contributions of women. And her particular enthusiasm was for the vast amount of volunteer work that was done by women in the Halifax area to support the Second World War. And so this was the focus of our first project and an important part of the founding rationale.
Perfect. The next question is a very good one. What were some of the early challenges in getting people to recognize women's history as an important field?
I think the times were with us. I think that the second wave of feminism made women's history seem plausible, period. I'm dictating. I'm used to that. I'm sorry.
This is really
you
good.
can edit it out if you like.
Don't worry.
But that just made me lose my train of thought. You're going to have to do a little editing here. What was it?
What were some of the early challenges?
Oh, yes. I was going to tell you about meeting the friend of a father, the father of a friend at a party who asked me what I was doing. And happily, I told him that I was teaching women's history at the Mount. And he looked at me sternly and without cracking a smile said, "Well, there can't be much to teach." Period.
I'm laughing but in despair. So, and how did you react?
I reacted more courteously than probably he deserved. I just laughed at him.
Absolutely.
And I think it was a question that revealed a widespread understanding of history in which men do public things and women do private things, and that the private sphere is not the subject of history.
Yes.
I wrote a book about it.
Oh, and I want to know more about that. And what do you consider the greatest achievement of this work?
Well, I think the achievement is national and international rather than personal. The flowering of excellent women's history has been a great addition to our understanding of the past. I don't think it's possible to understand a culture without understanding what the women were doing.
And what advice, once we are talking about us as women to understand, right? What advice would you give to young historians, particularly women, who are just beginning their careers?
I think the advice I'd give to women who are beginning their historical careers is that it's important to understand that patriarchy still rules in universities, period. That it is difficult to persuade the academy that feminist scholarship should be central.
Even so many years
later.
Working on that and having research on that, trying to improve society about this topic and
that's right.
Educate.
And I remember this quote. Somebody told me about an interview. A woman and a man were being interviewed for a job in a history department in a university. And one of the men in the department said of the male candidate, "He best embodies my understanding of a historian." Isn't that a phrase that needs a lot of unpacking?
Yes, because it has like so many layers.
That's right. And that whole idea of men embodying the ideal. Women's bodies are too different. They do not embody the ideal.
Exactly. But nowadays, this is a very kind of topic that would get, would lead to hours of discussion.
Yes.
Right? Because we have been discovering so many things to put in the middle of that. Next question here, it's something that I've been very excited to ask you. I've heard that you are working on a very interesting project right now.
Yes, I do have a new project. It's called The Pool Sisters.
Okay.
And it is about the women that I have exercised with at the Needham Community Center since the middle of the 1990s. And it's an exceptional group of women, I believe, as is the Needham Community Center. The north end of Halifax, where this center is located, has been a district that has for many years been regarded as poor, dangerous, and in need of a lot of social work. And I think the response of North Enders to that pushy social working stuff is that sites like the Needham Community Center become sites of dissent and reform. And I would argue that my Pool Sisters embody that very well. They come together for exercise classes, both in the pool and in the gymnasium. And they are obviously concerned about their health. But the question that I always enjoyed asking, because we did interview a lot of these women, was, have your Pool Sisters ever helped you in times of trouble? And the answers were fabulous. There was hardly a woman that I interviewed that did not say, yes, that happened. when I had joint transplants, when I got a new knee and I had to go to Camp Hill for physiotherapy, there was a group of women who took turns driving me.
That's very
I
nice.
can go on and give you those kinds of examples. When I couldn't shower myself, one of the pool sisters who was a nurse came to my house and showered me every day for a week. The kindness of these women has really been remarkable. And it is manifested very clearly in the welcome that newcomers receive. This is a very diverse group in terms of age, ethnicity, ability levels. Many of us have disabilities of various sorts. Many of us are elderly. Some are not. Some are young. So we have this nice mix of people. And everyone I interviewed commented on two things: how welcome they were when they first started, and how helpful their pool sisters were in times of trouble. And I use that very vague term because times of trouble can vary. The loss of a spouse is something that a number of the pool sisters have experienced. And one of the things I've noticed about them is that after the spouse dies, probably within a day or two, the woman is back at the pool because that's her solid base. That's where she will have her friends, and that's where she will exercise away all her troubles. So the thing about this book that has come to captivate me completely is that I have an excellent story about women and their sense of community and their ability to protect one another and to demand better of the institution that they participate in. But also, this group of women tells us a whole lot about the North End, which is an area, for example, in which there have been 3 public housing developments, a lot of social work activity. So looking for dissent has been an interesting part of this, and part of the dissent now is our frustration as a group at seeing the development, the construction of a new Needham Community Center to replace the old one, and we are very frustrated that the timing just gets put off and put off. Now they're talking 2031 that it will be finished, and many of us will be dead by then.
So it's very interesting that you were pointing out about the region.
Yes.
Where it happened. Of course, I imagine that women in Canada are very supportive, but it started to get me thinking that probably it is the region too. Not as a small region, but the country itself, right?
Yes, but I would also say the neighborhood is important.
Yes.
Yes, very specific, very narrow. But yes, the neighborhood where I think it's fair to say people have been pushed around a bit.
Yes.
That coalesces into the ability to protest.
Yes.
And we are, for example, on the 4th of November, having a meeting, the Pool Sisters are having a meeting with our local city councillor because we feel that she is not working as avidly as we would hope for the construction of the new Needham.
Right?
Yes.
And to get to know about those little details that is not something that we see every day. It's not so public shared, right?
That's right.
It's important for us to get to know those stories from our community.
I think it's vital.
Right.
And I think that probably there are lots of stories.
Yes.
But we see so little written about women's activism, women's activism about their own health. Some of the people who come to these classes are now in their 90s.
And what else you have to tell me about this new project?
We've interviewed about 30 women and several members of the staff. And one little anecdote that struck me as very interesting. There's a woman who has been an instructor of the Aquasize classes as long as I've been going. So for more than 30 years. She's just over 60 herself. She's not that old. But she loves Needham. She lives in Dartmouth. She has a practice as an esthetician, But she comes one day a week to teach a class at Needham, and she says that she doesn't even break even on it. By the time she pays her gas and comes across the bridge, she's in the red. But she said, I would miss those women too much. And so I still keep doing the class so that I keep them in my lives. And she said, they inspire me. And there's one of the Poole sisters in particular who's in her 90s. Her name is Lorraine. And she said, I would miss Lorraine.
That's so good too. Like, this is not part of, like, you know, my life right now. I'm not a part of this story, but it's very good to hear that. People can't see us, but we are just like exchanging smiles right now.
That's right. That's right. Yes. Yes. Yes, and I hope you find a group such as this.
Me too.
That will support you through all your troubles. I mean, several of the women, and I'm coming up to this myself, are no longer able to drive. And there are two of the Poole sisters who pick these women up. There's no money exchanged. It's just a kindness.
Yes.
That the women who can still drive do for the women who can't.
This is very nice. I'm very happy to live in a place where I could find this kind of people, right?
And I do think that there is something about the North End that generates unity.
Yes.
And it's funny. When I first moved here in 1993, my son was a late teenager and behaved stupidly with his ATM card. Okay? So
Okay.
we won't go into the details. However, he went to the bank and he was sort of, you know, what can I do about this? And the woman at the bank, the teller, said, you live in the North End. I'll fix it.
Oh my God. Okay, so I want to live here now.
Everybody wants to live here. That's why housing prices
I
have
was
gone up.
thinking about that when I saw your neighborhood today. At first, I was like, oh, that's such a place, like a good place. I want to live here. But now, I think I'm going to start doing some research. Dr. Guildford, thank you so much for sharing your time and insights with us today. It has been a privilege to hear your reflections and stories. We'll share the episode with you before publication, and I hope our listeners will take the time to explore the work of Women's History Society of Nova Scotia.
Thank you so much, Tawani. It's been lots of fun to do it with you.